Warp City, the first Celeste sight reading competition map. You may recall, I did not come last in this race. Well, I'm here to wrong that right. I spent hours creating a TAS for this map. It was fast. It was sleek. It was... Scrubs made a faster one. So we joined forces and made the fastest TAS that we could. I'm going to be showcasing two TASes today. One is fast, the other is goofy. To help you better understand what is going on, I'm going to explain a few mechanics, but if you're just here to see the TASes, they are at these timestamps. These explanations dive into some of the more technical aspects, but I've tried to keep them as clear and easy to follow as possible. First up, coyote frames. Madeline can input a jump for 5 frames after walking off of a ledge, allowing for more distance in certain situations. One of the main mechanics of the map, the way these warp bubbles work, is that when you enter into one, it disappears and it teleports you to the closest bubble, and we abuse this in certain ways during the TAS. During coyote frames, the game still considers you to be on the ground, and by inputting a hyper or a super within this 5-frame window, you gain the speed boost from the hyper or super as well as keeping your dash from the bubble, even if that bubble was in midair. When Madeline hits a wall, the game records how fast she was moving, and if the wall doesn't block her from moving forward within the next 5 frames, she will continue at the same speed she had when she hit the wall. If Madeline does a climb jump at the top of a wall while still moving, she can get over the wall and keep her speed, as well as add the speed from the climb jump. This is especially useful when she's using a dash, as the climb jump can save her speed that would normally be lost when the dash ends, and we can add on the extra speed of the climb jump as well. An ultra dash, commonly referred to as an ultra, is a diagonal down dash performed when Madeline is traveling at a high horizontal velocity. By doing it, she gains a 1.2 times multiplier to her horizontal speed upon touching the ground. The simplest and most common way to perform an ultra is to do a hyper dash and dash down diagonally as soon as possible. The dash must end before Madeline touches the ground to maintain momentum. Grounded ultras are the fastest way to move on flat terrain. Dashing down diagonally while on or very close to the ground will still give you the 1.2 times speed multiplier, but all of that will be lost when the dash ends. This can be chained infinitely on flat terrain by dashing down diagonally right after jumping. The most optimal frame to jump on is the 14th frame. This refers to wall bouncing on a wall with spikes. Since spikes do not kill the player when moving away from them, you need to be moving horizontally before the wall bounce, which is possible after your dash ends. A bubble lift is entering a bubble with a crouched hitbox, raising it by 2 pixels. This is usually performed with the demo dash, but can also be done simply using a crouch jump. Bubble lifts are possible because bubbles center your hitbox when entered, hence you will be higher up if you enter the bubble with the smaller crouching hitbox. Special shout out to Vale and HE2D, who both created TASes for this level. We use a few of their strats throughout the TAS to make it as fast as possible, and you'll see their names on screen when we're using one of the strats that they found. A quick note before we begin, I will be pausing and slowing down the first TAS to better explain the moves that we're doing, and I tried to do it in real time, but it was impossibly fast to get all the explanations in. Scrubs has uploaded a copy of both TASes on his YouTube channel without explanations if you would like to see the first TAS go at full speed. Now, let's get into the first TAS. We skip this bubble by corner kicking and dashing over the wall on the right into a corner boost. We can delay our bubble hypers to help with distance thanks to the extended coyote time, but this only works in this room since we take the hard path. We use a downright dash on the first possible frame here to carry our momentum, but we need to delay around 20 frames to wait for the zip mover. We use an upwards demo to get higher up without dying, and we're able to jump off the wall here. And then we put as many jumps here as we could. We don't die here since the spikes are being pushed at us, giving us the momentum to go through this tiny gap. Using an upright demo dash, we're able to get to this bubble slightly faster. We use a bubble lift here to gain some height. We've got a reverse demo hyper into a corner boost here, allowing us to skip all of these warp bubbles. HE2D's TAS is the only one that I saw that could make it up this shaft in a single dash. We jump here to avoid a bubble lift, as that would stop the zip mover from activating. We gain a ton of speed here with 3 lift boosts and 2 ultras. All that momentum gets us over this bubble and allows us to skip the first half of this room. We do a super here instead of a hyper to gain more hype and keep our dash for later. Don't blink, we skip this entire room abusing warp bubbles. A bubble lift here and a corner boost, skipping the crystal. The intended strat turned out to be the fastest here, but we can use a demo hyper to skip the last bubble. We're able to skip the majority of this room by doing a corner kick and barely entering this bubble while we're on the platform. Extended demo hyper into a corner boost into a G Ultra, or as I like to say, tech salad. We do an ultra here and use a bubble lift to get this spike jump. We use a corner boost to get 2 boosts from the platform and avoid death by 1/10 of a pixel. We're actually going too fast here and need to slow down to get through this spike gap. This sequence is simply insane. We do 2 corner boosts from the same bubble to activate the zipper, allowing us to do a failed hyper and a corner boost for more speed. We use a wall boost to get the crystal and go back to the platform, giving us a dash for this point here. We go left here to adjust the starting position to get our dash back by a pixel. We do a climb jump out of this bubble to avoid the next bubble. I think Madeline's enjoying herself. Using an extended wave dash into a down right dash, we're able to delay enough to get behind this zip mover. We enter the 3rd bubble here, giving us an extra dash. A quick corner boost to set up a triple lift boost, followed by a corner boost to carry our speed. A quick G Ultra into the bubbles so we can do a reverse demo hyper for tons of speed, followed by 2 corner boosts. We activate this platform and get into this bubble, skipping the last half of the room. We land on top of this platform and use a cheeky jump here to gain enough height to get to the zip mover. Squeeze through the bubbles and the spikes, and this corner boost is actually stalling to set up for another triple boost into another corner boost. This corner slip allows us to keep our momentum into this corner boost. We then jump to barely avoid the spike in the bubble, use a corner boost to avoid the warp bubble, allowing for a hyper bunny hop into another corner boost. This whole sequence is ridiculous and barely possible. Using a failed hyper to get lots of height while ducking, we can squeeze through the spike gap to use an extended demo hyper for speed and get our dash back. A bubble lift here and we're able to use a wall climb to cancel our speed, get into this warp bubble and use a reverse wave dash to skip the other bubble. We can use a demo dash to get into a gap here and jump off the wall, and we activate this platform moving up because we're within 1 pixel of the ground. We're able to do a corner boost to get up to the top bubble first, so they're both out of the way when we jump through here. A crouch jump to get through this gap, skipping the beginning of the room. We could do 2 corner boosts, but we need the stamina. We do a wall boost here to cancel the vertical speed and do a double corner boost to get to the other block, leaving just enough stamina to do 1 more climb jump. Since the platform is moving fast enough, we can jump off the spikes here without dying. Low wave dash setup at the end here, a delayed hyper into a demo hyper to skip the zip mover, a left corner boost to skip most of this section, a cheeky little reverse demo hyper to skip the left bubble, and a corner boost that doesn't actually save any time. Another triple boost from this traffic block and a corner boost just to round out the speed. A right hyper bunny hop that allows us to keep the crouch state and our speed to get through this tight gap. We retain some horizontal speed through this bubble here, which allows us to get in front of the platform. A quadruple boost and our speed registers at 1021 pixels per second, making this the fastest the Madeline goes during this TAS. We're able to slide under the 3rd platform and do some boosts here to get a wall boost. I wish there was a way to skip these bubbles, but we just couldn't find it. A nice corner boost to activate this platform and another corner boost, then there's a single frame here where we can jump, allowing us to skip this entire room. We get our dash back by a single pixel here. A G Ultra here, and then wall boost to get back into the bubble. A reverse demo hyper, and we actually need to slow down in order to avoid these spikes. It's faster to skip this platform since we carried an extra dash through here. If you watch carefully, you can see Madeline do a dance, but if you don't have superhuman vision, I'll slow it down for you. We use a corner boost to get over the spikes quickly, and then we use a delayed bubble hyper, setting us up for buffer jumps on the traffic block without activating it, which actually allows us to get more height. And onward to the final room. We abuse the warp bubble mechanic to skip this part of the room. 2 corner kicks allow us to just barely get into this bubble. And finally, we boost to get as much speed as we can and get into the heart room. We collect the heart, do a little dance, and collect the berry on the last possible frame. And I hope you're ready for more, because now it's time for... This is a specific type of TAS that I like to make where I'm not trying to play optimally, but rather trying to play in the most wrong way possible. Since the main tech in this map is the bubble hyper, I thought it would be fun to make a TAS that avoids bubble hypers. Not to be outdone by the fast TAS, we go for the hard route too. We use a wave dash and a corner boost to get to the other side. We use a good old-fashioned super, and we don't need that zip mover, but that double dash was helpful. This room has one of the only bubble hypers in the map that I couldn't figure out how to skip, which was later found out to not be necessary, as you saw, but I left it in because I was already done with the TAS. This room has my favorite sequence, and it took me forever to get the timing right on this. The key was a failed wave dash, gaining just enough height to do a jump off that wall, allowing a corner boost to just barely make it through that spike tunnel. A couple of very tight corner jumps, and jumping all the way down, we're able to avoid the bubble on the bottom, and we managed to do all of that without touching the block down there as well. Here we bypass the zip mover to get rid of the bubble, allowing us to collect and carry the double dash for absolutely no reason. Here we have to clear out these warp bubbles in order to pull off this final corner kick and a wall jump. This sequence is fun, so I've slowed it down for you. While making this video, the TAS actually broke, so I had this sequence here, but it turns out you can stay there indefinitely. A quick reverse wave dash, and we're off to the next room. We just skipped this puzzle by going down, and then another reverse to get us to the other side, and no, this corner kick here is not necessary. Another wave dash and a bunch of corner jumps to avoid using that double dash just for fun, and then we skip the rest of the room with more corner jumps and a corner boost. Here we avoid using the intended wall bounce and instead opt for the much easier corner jump. Since we're avoiding bubble boosts, we do a reverse super off this block to get a double dash so we can get back up here. And that wave dash was barely possible. We avoid activating the zip mover with some quick jumps because who needs to activate zip movers? Do a corner boost into a bunny hop to get up to the next zip mover, and apparently we need to use zip movers. The room that took me 2 hours on my run, turns out you can just skip. Yep. Pretty sure this sequence here is RTA viable. I do a bubble lift here so I can do a spike jump off of the wall bounce. Get ready for a whole lot of corner jumps. This sequence is funny because I had forgotten that you can just activate the zip mover, so I go through this elaborate setup to get through that gap. I avoid this bubble just because I can, and then there's a pixel perfect gap here that I was able to squeeze through, and where there's a pixel perfect gap, I have to fit through it. This is the only C-pop in the run and it's completely useless. This setup took forever to figure out how to get. I was trying to find a way to get into the left bubble before the right bubble and eventually decided to do this part backwards, which incidentally set me up to gain a lot of speed off this zip mover. Another very fast sequence here and I'll slow it down in the corner. I completely stop all momentum here just because it's possible to do the rest without it, and it's also possible to get through that gap under there just barely. I chose not to though because we already used that in the fast TAS. There's a useless corner boost here and we're able to skip the left half of the screen. This TAS will be forever better than me at walking off the edge of platforms. Here I managed to get into the top bubble before the bottom bubble and fit through that gap. And there's another little gap here that we're able to fit through to avoid that other warp bubble. We go through this gap because it's more fun than activating the other zip mover, and we skip the rest of the room by doing some cheeky jumps off of these zip movers here. This corner jump is the intended route and no one can convince me otherwise. We're able to do a reverse super here and get into the next booster, and this is the second and last bubble hyper that we have to do in this run. I avoid these bubbles and do a super easy corner jump. The second half of this room took forever to get down. I wanted to get to the bottom bubble before I got to the top bubble, so I had to get into the middle bubble so that it would disappear, and it makes it so when I enter the bottom bubble I go to the top bubble. Does all that make sense? No? Well, it was fun to watch anyway. For this room, I wanted to get a double boost off of the horizontal zip mover, but in order to do so, I had to get rid of the warp bubble, so that made me have to do the whole room in reverse to get a bunch of useless speed. I'd say that this room probably has the highest amount of warp bubble abuse in the whole TAS. As a side note, a lot of these spike tunnels that you see me jump through when I don't have a dash were really hard to get down and the timings were just awful. Here I specifically stall so that we can do some jumps off at the top of the zip mover, and then when we jump we're able to avoid using the second bubbles from the corner jumps, and then we use a wave dash at the end of the room to finish up. Final room here, and we do a lot more of the intended route than I would have liked, but hey, we get to do a bunch of grabs at the end here that makes it look like Madeline is slapping the traffic blocks to make them go faster. And then we do a very fast reverse here into a bunny hop, giving us enough speed to make it to the end. I hope you enjoyed watching these TASes, and if you enjoyed your time here today, let me know down in the comments.